Hey everyone, welcome to the investor.bet AFL 2024 Week 2 of the finals, so semi-final round. In this video, I'm going to go through and preview both of the games, who I think is going to win and why, and go through what I'm considering betting on in each of these matches. We're going to look at, the strengths, weaknesses for both sides, look at how they've been trending recently, their statistical performances, both in attack and defense, and also go through the betting history between these two sides, who's been winning, who's been covering, what the odds were in their previous matches, so on and so forth. So I'm really excited to do this. We just had a big first round of the finals, a couple of upsets. So last weekend, two underdogs won their games outright. The first of those being Geelong, big winners over Port Adelaide by 84 points. This game was pretty even during the first quarter. There was only 3 points between them at quarter time. Port got into a small lead. They kicked themselves in front midway through the second quarter, or kind of early in the second quarter. But from that point onwards, it was all Geelong. They had 38 scoring shots to Port Adelaide's 19, so exactly double the number of scoring shots. We look through the other trends for this game. We'll go to the team statistics. Geelong dominated the disposals, and it was particularly the uncontested possession. Only a small difference, +4 in inside 50s. However, it was the efficiency inside 50 that was the major difference, going at 68%, which is extremely high. You can compare that to the AFL average at 49%, and then Port only going at 37% inside 50. 18-8 free kick count in favor of Geelong. Clearances fairly even. Geelong did dominate the stoppage clearances as well, which are generally where you can generate more points from the stoppage clearances. So for the most part, slightly more important to win than solely the center clearances. As you can see there, 229 uncontested possessions to 154. And so on. So that's the major look at that game. Obviously, Geelong progressed through to a preliminary final. I think the Cats will probably be keen to play the Brisbane Lions out of the two. They have a good record against Brisbane, winning 3 of the past 4, whereas against GWS, the Giants have actually won 5 of the past 7 against Geelong. Port Adelaide play Hawthorn this week, which we're going to get to in a minute when we go through that game. Then on the Friday night game, another underdog won outright in Hawthorn. There wasn't a great deal between these two sides, but I definitely thought the value was with Hawthorn. They ended up winning 99-62. Another big difference in the scoring shots, 29-17. If we look through the trends for this game, first of all, it was fairly even early. Bulldogs had a small lead, but then from the second quarter, kind of mid-second quarter onwards, Hawthorn really ran away and then controlled the game. Was that run through the third quarter that really sealed the game. We'll get to it shortly, but Hawthorn have been the best second quarter side this season. And then if we look through the stats for this game, 410 disposals for the Hawks. Their disposal numbers are really through the roof during the second half of the season, compared to only 326 there for the Western Bulldogs. Efficiency going inside 50. Hawthorn went basically at AFL average, Bulldogs slightly below. Free kicks, 22-13 in favor of Hawthorn. Clearances, Bulldogs won the clearances. Stoppage clearances fairly even. And then uncontested possessions, 254 uncontested possessions for the Hawks. Interestingly, this week, Hawthorn and the Western Bulldogs, they are the top 2 teams that give up the least number of disposals to the opposition. If you look at the bet finders right here, which is one of the tools I use to analyze the game, you see Port Adelaide give up the least number of opposition disposals and least number of uncontested possessions. That's going to be the key factor for this game, is whether they can limit Hawthorn's uncontested possessions, and then Hawthorn give up the second least number of disposals to the opposition, and also don't concede many contested or uncontested. Third game, so we had 2 games on Saturday. The first one was probably the most intense and exciting game of the round, unless you cheer for one of the other sides, and that was the Sydney versus GWS game. The Swans ended up winning this game by 6 points. However, GWS did control the game for the most part. Rushed behind early, put the Swans in front. From that point, GWS led all the way until late in the fourth quarter, where Isaac Heaney leveled it up, and then Joel Amartey put the Swans in front to win by 6 points. So Sydney go through to a prelim final where they'll play the winner of the Port Adelaide Hawthorn game, where most likely they'll be keen to play Hawthorn, as they have a really good record against Hawthorn, whereas they've lost the past 8 against Port Adelaide, including a 148-36 defeat just over a month ago. But when you look at it and you look at the team's form, you would say Hawthorn of the two of the team in better form. However, the Swans do have a much better record against Hawthorn than they do Port Adelaide. Looking through the stats for this game, GWS led the disposal count. Inside 50s were fairly even, +2 to the Swans. Inside 50 efficiency, only at 44% for Sydney, but was still able to win the game. Going through, stoppage clearances were dominated by the Swans, 37-30. And then fairly even in the contested and uncontested possessions. So yeah, really not a great deal between these two sides. Probably a game GWS should have put them away and won. Now they have a tricky game against the Brisbane Lions coming up this weekend, even though they're at home. Brisbane coming off a pretty impressive win against Carlton last week, a game they were expected to win. They ended up winning by 28 points, 29 scoring shots to 16. Brisbane did have a 60-0 lead earlier in this game, about midway through to late in the second quarter. As you can see here, 61-13 at halftime. However, Carlton did kick a couple of late goals to get to that 13 points. Pretty much from that point, Brisbane had the game won. So it's very tricky to just, be like, oh, well, why did Carlton close the gap so much? Obviously, Brisbane were playing full time, and knowing that they were progressing, you don't want to risk injuries, or suspensions, all those kind of things. Have spoken about plenty of times Brisbane's second half RMH issue. We're going to touch on that when we talk about the Lions Giants game. But this was pretty much a domination in the first half by the Lions. Carlton did win the disposal count, particularly mainly due to the number of handballs, 56 inside 50s a piece. However, the efficiency going inside 58.9% to 35%. Stoppage clearances, Carlton did just win the stoppage clearances. However, I believe a lot of that came late on in the game. So now looking ahead to this weekend's game, I know that's why you guys watch this video, to get those insights to help you with your bets for these games. I'm going to aim to give you as much information as I can at this stage. It's only Tuesday. First game's not until Friday night. Obviously, team lists and etc. all have to come out before then. But we have Port Adelaide at home against Hawthorn. We bring up the betting trends for this matchup. We'll first of all see Hawthorn are favourites for this game, $1.59, -8.5 on the line, and 166.5 is the total for this game. Now, firstly, with the betting trend, 7 of the past 10 between these two sides have gone under the total points line. They last met round 10 this season at the Adelaide Oval, and Port Adelaide won that game 80 points to 79. Now, this was a game, there was a lot of talk about this after Hawthorn led pretty much the entire game, and then Port Adelaide kicked themselves in front with a couple of extremely late goals to win the game by 1 point. Since that point, that was in round 10, Hawthorn have been very impressive, only losing 2 games since that point, a 2-point loss against GWS, and then they lost by 51 points against Geelong. Aside from that, they have won every game since then. The fact that Hawthorn did control this game so much, if you look at the player stats, see which players contributed the most. Obviously, Will Day played for the Hawks. That day he's not going to be in the team this week. James Sicily was out for this game, and if he did play, I would have expected Hawthorn to have won this game, knowing the circumstances of their late defense and closing out the game was something I looked at a lot last season. Games when Sicily didn't play, Mr. Injury, etc. Hawthorn defensively, once they kind of lost that little bit of momentum, weren't able to gain it back with Sicily in the team. They're able to control those momentum shifts a lot more. Butters had 32 disposals in this game and 112 fantasy points. The tricky thing, Butters, the last report I did see was that he was going to be playing this game, and he is going to play, obviously, with a rib injury. I'd be very, very cautious this week of taking too many player disposals in this game. As I've already mentioned, like both sides concede a low number of disposals to the opposition, which you can see here. And then also when it comes to Port Adelaide Butters, who's their leading disposal getter playing injured, Finn McGuinness likely to tag one of Connor Rosie or Ollie Wines and look to take them out of the game as much as he can. So be very, very cautious playing any disposal players on Port Adelaide side. Probably wouldn't talk you out of playing a few on Hawthorn. Currently, with no teams out, there are no marks up yet. I'm going to do my absolute best to get a video out for some props this week. It may only be like a really, really short one, maybe on the go, but I'll look to try and put something out, even if it's just a short video. Make sure you're following on Instagram, and I'll look to put something up on the stories for that. I have a very busy weekend coming up, but I'll try and get something out. I aimed to do it last week as well, but we'll try and get it out this weekend once the lineups are out. But yeah, definitely be cautious with the Port Adelaide player props. I think a few of their players that generally rack up a lot of ball are going to struggle in this game. Hawthorn, I probably wouldn't talk you out of any props with them, and I feel like there will be some to run with. Also for this game, Hawthorn have covered 5 of the past 7 versus Port Adelaide, so they've been very good at covering the spread. Now, this is the first time in quite a long time Hawthorn have been favourite for this matchup. So even though they've been covering as an underdog. Then see last time they were plus 32.5, $5.60 on the money line. They're all the way into $1.59. That's how much the bookmakers have deemed that Hawthorn have improved. And obviously Port Adelaide coming off big loss last week by 84 points against Geelong. Port have won 4 of the past 5 versus Hawthorn, so they do have a pretty good record in this matchup. But I feel like, they probably should have lost this game. Hawthorn should have won that game. Port big winners last season, but these past few seasons with Hawthorn, obviously getting these younger players who are now in their 2nd, 3rd, 4th season, more game time, can kind of rule a line through a majority of these matches. I feel like these sides, especially Hawthorn, are in a very different place now. Hawthorn are 1-2 at the Adelaide Oval this season. The 2 losses that they had were by 5 points or less. They lost to Port in this game by 1 point, and then they lost to Collingwood by 5 points. So they're the only losses. So they handle this venue very, very well, and definitely not concerned about them playing there. I do think Hawthorn win this game. I'm pretty confident they do so. It's very difficult to see Port Adelaide bouncing back from that performance last week. Also with the issues they're going to have with their ball winners. I think they're going to really, really struggle to win enough of the ball to win this game. And the issue you have playing against Hawthorn is once they get the ball, it's very, very difficult to get it back. They've been very good, the past few months of holding possession of the ball. They are able to chip the ball around, and then when they elect to go, they're able to go and go quickly and score. The key for Port Adelaide for their chance of winning this game is to be accurate with their shots on goal. Port Adelaide do generate the 5th most inside 50. However, Hawthorn concede the 3rd least inside 50. So, Port Adelaide aren't going to get a stack of chances, and they have the worst accuracy in the league. So for Port Adelaide to win this game, it's going to rely on them kicking straight, something they didn't do last week, and historically this season, haven't really done much at all. So if they kick very straight, they give themselves a chance. Aside from that, I don't see them winning. Also, with their major ball winners in the clearances and in the midfield, I think they're also going to really struggle. They have been a good clearance side this season. However, looking at the more recent data, I think it's going to be a struggle. They're low in contested possessions, and Hawthorn give up the 3rd least number of contested possessions to the opposition. So as long as, Hawthorn's game style, with that in mind, I find it very hard to see, Port Adelaide winning this game. Most likely from a betting perspective, I'm looking for the best price I can get of Hawthorn on the money line. And then aside from that, other bets on this game, I'm definitely interested in Hawthorn's team total to go over. Last week, as I mentioned, Geelong's had 38 scoring shots against Port Adelaide. Now, last week, Hawthorn played the Bulldogs, who going into that game were the #1 defensive side in the league. And, prior to that, they put up 170 against North Melbourne, 131 against Richmond, 112 against Carlton. Now, all those sides are bad defensive sides. And, sometimes your numbers can be inflated against those kind of sides. But to put up 99 against the Bulldogs, who in that kind of pressure, in that environment, and being the #1 defensive side, was very, very impressive. Now going against Port Adelaide, who aren't as strong defensively, and, coming off a performance where they've conceded that many shots, Hawthorn should control possession of this game and also field position. Can see them kicking, that 90, 95 points in this game, going over the team total. So those are the two ways I'm looking at playing the first game. And then the second game's on Saturday for a spot against Geelong in the prelim final. GWS $1.73. They're 4.5-point favorites. Total is 168.5. Between these two sides, 5 of the past 7 head-to-head have gone over. And interestingly, the away team has covered the spread in 14 of the past 16. So hasn't mattered whether they're playing at the Gabba or they're playing down in Sydney. The away sides consistently cover the spread. GWS have won and covered the past 2. So both meetings this season. So in round 7, the Giants won 113-59. So big winners down there. And then in round 22 at the Gabba, the Giants were held to 1 point in the first quarter and then ended up winning that game 82-64. Now, with the Brisbane Lions, if you look through their quarter-by-quarter scoring this season, they're clearly the number 1 first quarter side. They're ranked first in points scored, first in points conceded. So they're historically this year get off to really, really good starts. They're pretty good as well in the second quarter, pretty good in the third quarter. Their scoring drops off slightly from 28 to 22 to 20. But then in the fourth quarter, they're conceding the 14th most points, which, is an element of, well, we've got a big lead. We can give, a few soft goals to the opposition at the end of the game. And then it's also an element of, well, we feel like we've got a big enough lead, and then we're going to let, the other team run right over the top of us and fully take the foot off the gas. Now, I don't think that's going to change. The fact that we're at this stage of the season and this is just happening, majority of weeks on the season. It's not just, happen once or twice where teams have come back against them and won. It's happened consistently over the season. I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. The question is, how are GWS going to go in that first half? Can they keep the game close enough to give themselves a chance of winning? I do feel like they can. They're, third ranked first quarter side when it comes to win percentage. However, they're 10th and 9th in points scored and points conceded. It's not really that great. Obviously, there's not a great deal between sides at this, first quarter. A lot of teams averaging between that 18 to 22 kind of range for both categories. But they are winning a lot of first quarters. Second quarters, not quite as strong. They do concede 22 points during second quarters. And then third quarter is where they are best, and they're about average, or slightly worse than average in the fourth quarter. So they're not a side that can fully take advantage of like a fourth quarter slowdown by the Brisbane Lions. But I do see this game being very, very close, and Brisbane can't afford to fully take their foot off the gas. So that's just a little bit of a look at them. Brisbane are 2-2. They've won their last 2 and have covered all 4 meetings versus GWS at their home venue down in Sydney. And the tricky thing about that, they haven't played there since 2020. So this is a little bit of unfamiliar territory for the Brisbane Lions. Now, I do think GWS are deserving to be favourites off their performance last week against Sydney. Probably, as I said, should have won that game. Like, they were in the winning position in that game, but just let it slip away. Brisbane had a lot easier time of it. Like, they were very good during that first quarter and first half, and just coasted to the line against Carlton in a game where they were expected to win and win comfortably. So they got the job done. I do think GWS are deserving to be favourites for this game, but I do have it closer to a pick 'em. I feel like GWS, it should be like $1.85, $1.88 to Brisbane around the $1.92, $1.95 range. Now, for Brisbane at 212, do think there is a little bit of value with them on the head-to-head odds. One thing I want to look at is when they last met. So this game back in round 22, how, what happened in this game that caused GWS to end up winning by 18 points. Now, if we look at the trend, you'll notice here, Brisbane were leading by 30 points early on, or sorry, late in the first quarter. So 31, to 31 points to 1, and then even back up to around the 10 to 20 point margin, and then GWS kicked 2, 4, 6 straight goals to run out winners. Firstly, one thing you always want to look at is the number of scoring shots. Brisbane kicked 8 goals, 16, so 24 scores compared to GWS with 17 total, but they kicked 13 goals and only 4 behind. So that's a huge difference in itself. And, this is why accuracy is so important in the AFL. If you're kicking scores like this, it's going to be very, very hard for you to win games, even though you're getting that number of shots. We look at the statistics for this game. Disposals are very even. Brisbane won the inside 50 count. They only went at 70%, so that's very low compared to the Giants, close to 80%. Efficiency inside 50, 53.8%. However, they weren't converting those shots into goals. There was just a lot of behinds that contributed to that. So even though GWS were less efficient, they were able to kick a winning score. Looking through the clearances, GWS +2 in the clearances. Brisbane won the center clearances. However, GWS won the stoppage clearances. Contested possessions won by the Lions. Uncontested possessions won by GWS, 63 to 50 in the turnovers. So both sides conceded a below average number of turnovers. Since that game that we just spoke about, GWS have only won 1 of their past 3. They beat Fremantle, however, were trailing by 9 points at halftime in that game. Then they lost to the Western Bulldogs down in Victoria, and then, as we mentioned last week, lost to the Sydney Swans. Since then, Brisbane gave up another lead against Collingwood. At halftime, they had a 5-point lead in that game, but a 24-point lead at quarter time. Then beat Essendon by 20, and then 28-point win over Carlton last week. There are 2 main ways I'm looking at going in this game. Firstly, I do think there's a bit of value with the Lions, so leaning towards for them to be winning this game. I think they're going to get enough chances to win, and if they just put it all together and play 4 quarters, they'll win this game. So we've had a lot of success this year with backing Brisbane Lions in the first quarter and first half. That's been like the real moneymaker with them. You could definitely do that again in this game. I don't think GWS are going to be as bad. It's not a great situation. We don't have a really bad first quarter, first half side where we can fully take advantage of it like we have been able to in some weeks. But I do think Brisbane get the jump on GWS again in this game, especially GWS coming through that game last week against Sydney. That was a very, very intense game and might have taken a little bit out of the Giants. So they might come out a little bit flat, and then it's just going to be a matter of Brisbane whether they can hold them off. This is my first thought, and then I'm also interested try bet market of either side to win by 1 to 24. I feel like of the 2 games this weekend, this one's going to be really close. Could be decided by 5 to 10 points either way and really come down to the wire. So definitely like that bet in this game as well. Looking at the totals of 168.5, be leaning towards the over for this game, but don't really have any confidence. One thing I would recommend, if we come back to last weekend's games, of the 4 games played last week, 3 of them went under and only 1 game went over the total. And the game that did go over was the Port Adelaide Geelong game, largely thanks to Geelong kicking 138 points. Generally, whenever any side scores that many, the game's going to go over the total. And when it comes to the games, though, of these other 3 games, they were all only 1 to 2 points out of what the closing total was. So majority of the games were leaning on that being overs. They just all fell 1 or 2 points short, aside from the top game here. So, definitely pay close attention to the totals. Look at buying them down a few points as well to, really secure it. This time of year, the odds get even more accurate. So you have to be more and more smart with the bets that you're choosing to put on. So I'd definitely be looking at the totals, leaning towards the over in both games, but definitely look to play them down to assure yourself of hitting those. Also, just quickly, as I forgot to mention it, the away teams last week covered 3 of the 4 games. Only the Brisbane Lions were the only home side to cover. Brisbane Lions were the only favourite to cover as well. GWS covered this game as an underdog. Hawthorn covered and won outright as an underdog, and so did Geelong. So that's a quick recap of last week. But just to quickly recap the games coming up for this weekend, Port Adelaide versus Hawthorn, like the Hawks to be winning and like their team total to go over. And then GWS versus the Brisbane Lions, like Brisbane to be winning this game. I think the value is with them. And also, as the other potential bet, looking at either side to win by 1-24, as I do think it's going to be a close game. If you're following along, good luck. Hope you guys have a great weekend. Win some money on the third last week of the AFL season. Next week, we'll have the prelim finals, and I'll be posting a video previewing those. So we'll be going through the winner of Port Adelaide versus Hawthorn taking on the Swans, and the winner of GWS versus Brisbane taking on Geelong for a spot in the grand final. Thanks, guys, for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the channel to make sure you don't miss those other videos. I'll aim to put out a player prop video closer to game time once lineups are out, so keep an eye out for that. And then also at the beginning of next season, I'm going to be sending out an AFL betting guide with a lot of the information you see in the bet finders and the betting history between teams, etc., etc. Going to set up a wait list for that, because if you want that, jump on the wait list. I'll put the link for that in the description. Just put in an email, and once I have that ready about a month before the 2025 season starts, I'll send it out to you so you can use it to prepare for next season, to make sure next year is a very profitable year for you betting on the AFL. So good luck this weekend, enjoy the footy, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for watching.